If you went anywhere in the world and picked a group of teens just like you, chances are you will all have a few things in common, like feeling the need to seek new experiences, like taking increased risks, like doing things to fit into a group. What's different about this behavior that's kicked into overdrive now that you're all in your teens? If you asked a biologist, the first thing they would point to is your brain. That's right. Your teenage brain is work in progress. When you turn 10, your brain starts upgrading its hardware and software in a major way. And this won't stop till you're in your mid-20s. Old brain cells are dying away. New ones are forming every second. Old connections between cells are breaking apart and millions of new ones are forming every second. Your brain is rewiring itself. And don't forget the chemicals inside your brain, a soup of hormones, genes, and proteins. All this means is that your teenage brain is working overtime to handle the world around you. You might find yourself getting stressed and moody pretty easily. But stress and emotions are not necessarily bad. Good stress, like a workout, motivates you. It sharpens you. It helps you connect to people. Positive stress will most likely make you repeat a behavior. Bad stress, like a fight or a breakup, is toxic. It lingers in your brain and body, and most likely you will steer clear of those experiences. In fact, stress plays a big part in how our teenage brains develop. It influences how brain cells are formed and how they connect to each other. It keeps tweaking the brain's chemical soup. All these changes are stored in different parts of our brain as our memories and experiences, and we use these to decide how to act in the future. One of the most important ways that stress and our teenage brains are linked to each other are through our hormones. Take the hormone cortisol that we produce when we are stressed. When adults are stressed, cortisol levels rise in the brain and gradually decrease over an hour or two. In adolescents who are stressed, that burst of cortisol hangs out a lot longer. Too much of it starts damaging the ways new brain cells are formed or connected. It also changes the brain's chemical levels. All of this can cause memory loss, depression, and anxiety. There are other hormones apart from cortisol and organs apart from the brain that help decide how we respond to stress. Take the HPA axis. This is a combination of a brain region and two organs that are vital to how we respond to stress. H is for hypothalamus, a region found in our brain. P is for the pituitary gland, an organ found right under the hypothalamus. And A is the adrenal gland, organs found right next to the kidney. Now imagine stress being a light switch and the HPA axis a series of light bulbs. When we are under stress, it turns the HPA axis on. Here's the key point. Stress activates the HPA axis, and that is how we deal with good and bad stress. But too much of bad stress overloads the HPA axis and releases a great deal of hormones. This is harmful and can lead to, as we said earlier, memory loss, depression, and anxiety. Now, you might be wondering, how does all of this information relate to the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame, or CMHF? Did you know that 2 CMHF laureates are responsible for discovering hormones and the HPA axis, and also explaining how stress affects our bodies? Their names are Hans Selye and Claude Fortier. Selye first started thinking about stress during his time in medical school. The patients he saw were all suffering from different diseases. But surprisingly, all those patients had a few things in common. They all looked tired, had no appetite, were losing weight, preferred to lay down rather than stand, and were not in the mood to go to work. His observations and experiments helped him come up with the biological theory of stress, something that no other researcher had done before him. He was instrumental in discovering important hormones in our body and our brain. He also showed that if we are unable to properly cope with stress, it could lead to serious issues like high blood pressure or even heart attacks. Claude Fortier knew of Cellier's works and used that information and his own research to explain for the first time how different kinds of stresses cause the body to release hormones like cortisol. He was also one of the earliest researchers in the world to discover and explain the HPA axis. For years, we have known that children who go through the stressful teenage years often suffer from anxiety, memory problems, diabetes, and high blood pressure later in life. But for a long time, we could never explain the link between stress during teenage years and health problems during adulthood. Thanks to the discoveries made by Cellier and Fortier, we now know that hormones and the HPA axis play an important role linking the teenage brain and stress. By developing treatments that target these hormones and the HPA axis, we can reduce the burden of stress during our growing years and hopefully lead healthier lives as adults.